Yeah, look, I think Barry makes a good point. Adding EVs to a fleet isn't actually going to reduce CO2 emissions. I think what a number of our customers are doing as part of a review of EVs is actually also looking at the total fleet utilisation, and I know that GWRC have done that. They've taken a third of the vehicles out of their fleet, and a number of other fleets are also looking at that, and that do you need that many vehicles? Over time you tend to accumulate them. And it's a great opportunity to do a full fleet review, and certainly the lease companies in the room, we've got Fleet Partners, Lease Plan, Custom Fleet, they can do some of that work. OptiFleet, I think, are here somewhere. And that's really the first step. Get some of the vehicles out, and then that helps your business case to put EVs into your fleet. Right now we're opening up to Q&A, so I'd encourage you to walk up to the front here, and if you've got some questions. The panellists.
Hi, thank you for the presentations. My question's for Steve and Philip. Just wondering about the commercial incentives to put in these charging facilities. It's excellent you're doing it, but just wondering how ChargeNet's paying for it, and was Spark, if you're doing it kind of for advertising or just to be good people, or what's going on?
I guess fundamentally it's idealistic in nature, where the business model, it's not a charity, so we definitely bill our customers for the use of our stations, but in a way we're taking the cost of the very large cost of a station and spreading it out over many charging sessions, many users. We charge 25 cents a minute for people to use the station, so that's our kind of our gross profit on the transaction. So you can work out how long it takes to to net $50,000. That's a lot of charging. So yeah, it's certainly there's no short-term return, but we've done modelling, and if you have faith that EVs will in fact take over as the primary form of vehicle or new vehicle that's brought into the country, then in 10 or 15 years it returns a profit.
And we're doing this from the standpoint that we have an asset that is in the ground and it's there. Adding charging to that, it doesn't cost us nearly as much as it does for Steve. At this point, charging is free, and we'll look at, there aren't, the number of EVs in the country is small, so we can do that. Over time, we'll look at, how we change that. Spark, there's value in advertising, there's value in customer loyalty. There's a whole different number of ways of slicing the value, and we'll evaluate that on an ongoing basis.
Yes, thank you. David Carley from Canada pointed out something I hadn't really thought about, and I wondered if any of you would like to comment. And that is, he was pointing out that car dealers in general aren't enormously enthusiastic about purchasing electric vehicles, for the simple reason that apparently they make only a small percentage on selling a new car, and the main profit they get is from servicing cars, the yearly service. And they're not that enthusiastic about electric cars because they don't need much servicing. And so that's why he said that is actually an obstacle to the rapid uptake of electric cars. So I wonder if any of you have got some thoughts on how do we get around that particular problem.
I think one of the pieces is educating consumers, so they're going into a dealership or looking for a used car and saying, this is what I want, versus showing up at a dealer and going, should I buy this one or should I buy this one? Not sure that makes any sense, but I think educating consumers is good.
Yeah, look, I think also the new manufacturers are offering service plans with the sale of the vehicles, so it does mitigate some of the risk of owning a vehicle and not knowing who to go to get it serviced. And I think that's something that probably hasn't been discussed much today, is where do you actually take an EV in New Zealand to get it serviced. So it's probably another discussion for another time.
Yeah, I'd sort of like to respond to that because I do represent the importers and the distributors. And let's just say what you spoke of is one of the myths that we'd like to break. The problem is, as the professor has so eloquently put, is there are buying, as we heard today, buying vehicles is emotional, and we've got a whole lot of things that we need to do to be able to incentivise it and increase the uptake. Australia and New Zealand are the only two markets in the world where we don't actually have a subsidy. And so even the current package doesn't directly address that price premium. So that current package will be very clear. It is going to increase the uptake. You know, from an industry, we think 64,000 is nice. We'd like 128,000. We'd like 350,000. We know how to sell cars. And so the issue around selling cars is all about some of these anxieties which are slowly being dispelled and that price premium. And until that price premium from a policy perspective and an integrated perspective can be addressed, the distributors are lining up with stock that they can't sell. There is an issue. In terms of servicing it, there is a lot of overhead every time. New Zealand has one of the highest model and model variants per head of population of any country in the world, even though we have a lot less vehicles. But that comes with an overhead, and we have a relatively small market. New Zealand's total market for new vehicles is 0.14% of the world market. That's for light and heavy. So it's not big. And when you don't have an ability to attract because we haven't got enough size, enough momentum, then it's no wonder that the OEMs say we'll go to California, we'll go to Japan, we'll go to Europe. And so we're sort of literally, as one of my friends here said today, on the edge of the world, prepared to fall off. We're really up to this challenge. From an industry, we're really up for this challenge. Anyone who says differently needs to come and have a chat with us. But there are a lot of different moving parts to this. But certainly, we know that the distributors are going to have to work with their dealers. Their dealers have every incentive, and there's very little difference between selling an EV and a PHEV than there is to selling any other type of vehicle. So it's part of business as normal in that sense. But we do need to address some wider policy issues, and I think that would dramatically increase the uptake. We have a very flat tax structure in New Zealand, and government is very hesitant to use the tax to do something. But if we just imagine that you bring in some environmental externalities and some fuel security risk and say, well, let's have a differential FBT where you can offset some of that. We seem to, as a country, to be very hesitant to do that. If you do that, at least for fleet buyers, there's a tipping point. And so we've got quite a few ideas on how you could increase it. But even with the package that's been announced, there will be an increase. It's just, can we make it faster?
Thank you, David. I guess one of the key messages from today too is, and it's been the word collaboration has been used a lot, and it's very important that a lot of these initiatives that are going around the country, there is a central point where all of that information is flowing through, so that that can be disseminated into these groups. And the three key areas really: infrastructure, EV uptake, and regulatory. And everybody's got their own preferences. I certainly don't have a preference for the regulatory part of it. It doesn't interest me, but it certainly interests others. And I think we need to be able to have those three areas talking together to make sure that this can happen. Time probably for one more question if somebody wants to rush up and ask. Otherwise, I think we're ready to summarise and get into the network drinks. We have one last question.
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Lloyd, and you will find me right at the end of the attendees lists because I represent no organisation. I'm here out of interest. And the one thing, I like to think I'm technically aware, but I hadn't realised how close and how real electric vehicles are becoming. And my question really for everybody present is, how do we get the message of today out to the general public? And before you say national radio, not everybody listens to national radio.
I'll make a quick start. So, as I said in my brief talk, I think one of the key ways is through champions or ambassadors, people that are immediately recognisable to the general public, and I think that over time will actually make a real difference.
Bums and seats. Yeah, the experience of being in an electric vehicle, or better, the experience of driving an electric vehicle. There's nothing like it, and it's like wafting along on some kind of magic carpet. You really do feel like the future has arrived, and there's real value in that, because it's something that's been repeated several times today, is that the vehicle purchases are almost entirely emotional. It's not about you do consider the dollars and the cents, but ultimately people pick one vehicle over another because it does something, it gives them some sort of feeling, and EVs have a very special feeling, and the only real way to have a grasp of that is to experience it.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that as well. I mean, certainly our experience getting our staff and our customers to drive the EV has been nothing but positive. We've had no negative comments at all. So we started with our senior management, CEO, then the executive team all drove the EV first, and now it's gone into the pool fleet, and that vehicle is booked out all the time. And customers, same thing, the eyes light up. I had a CEO I took out for a drive on Friday, and he said, right, I'm ordering 4 of these. I'm going to get 2 for Auckland, 1 for Wellington, 1 for Christchurch. So that was a decision made from driving the driving the car.
How many people in the room have driven an EV? Great. Good.
Excellent.
Can I make a comment on that? So the area that I do in BC is exactly to your point, is the public outreach, and so it's hugely important. I remember when I first started doing it, I asked, there was an EV group, and they were basically just focusing the conversations on people that were basically going to get them anyway. And I said, how many EVs do we have in Canada and BC right now? And they said, oh, we've got 500. And I'm going, are you serious? Only 500? I said, if you take, it's because charging stations. I said, you take everyone in this province that is a high-income earner that has a house so they can charge at home, and we ran the numbers, and we should have had 350,000 electric vehicles in BC. And so what we did is we did the market analysis, and we found the target audiences. So one of them is environmentalists. Go to farmers markets. Take your Tesla to a farmer's market and offer test drives, right? The technology sector, go to car shows, right? We have the International Car Show in Vancouver, and promote that at those ones, right? Shopping malls where you're going to get the cost-conscious people. Test drives is huge, absolutely huge, right? So that's how we did it. And I think that's really, really important, because you've got to get the message out. And when I look at this group here, you guys are key. Look how many people put their hands up who have test-driven cars. Imagine if every one of you takes that message that you took today and you tell 10 people, and half of those people go and buy an electric vehicle. That's huge. And then half of those people that they tell go and buy an electric vehicle. That's how it's going to work. There's going to be a groundswell from underneath, and there's going to be a top-down push from the government around incentivizing and de-incenting the bad behavior. But it's going to take us. It's going to take people like you guys to tell your friends who tell their friends. And I think that's important.
Very uplifting end to our session. I think we're ready for the summary now. Thanks very much.
Thank you.